Now, over the past few months, you probably have noticed that a lot of tweets and share links are starting to include these images embedded in them that are actually quotes from a website. So you might find something that you want to share and highlight and send to your followers. That's something that is hard to do on Twitter, especially because of the 140 character limit. So they've gotten around this by generating images that look like screenshots of the mobile app, and then they embed them in the tweets. And this is something Medium especially has started doing, which is an awesome way to share around that limitation, as well as just capturing the context. Like, for example, I had highlighted these 4 words, but that entire paragraph might be useful for you if you're trying to get a context of where that came from. So this is interesting and something I wanted to talk about, how you could go build this into your application on your own site. Now, I wanted to talk about building this from scratch, but as it turns out, Product Hunt has cloned this feature from Medium. So they've released their own microservice called ShareMeow. And if you know any of the guys there, their character definitely comes across in the naming here. So this is an awesome little service. It's a simple little Sinatra app that you can install, and it really doesn't have too many dependencies given what it's doing. So it's running a basic renderer, so you're rendering HTML and CSS, and then you're going to take a screenshot of that basically and save that and return that back to the requester, which would be your website's share code. So if you scroll down to the README section here, you can see an example of how Product Hunt uses that. They actually allow you to share comments in image format, and then also they optionally have this highlight as well, just like Medium does. And this is all a regular CSS and HTML document. It's just rendered on its own in the browser and then converted into a screenshot. So this little service supports custom fonts, cacheable images, and it also does authentication. So this is something that you don't want to get DDoSed by a bunch of users playing around with that. So the way that works is that we encode the parameters and use that as the authentication mechanism. So you'll pass over these 2 parameters, the encoded params and the encoded HMAC digest, and then that will be used to decode the string, which will be a very long URL potentially, and then that will return a JPEG image back to your application. So this is a service that you'll need to run separately from your Rails application. It's a Sinatra app as a microservice. So that means you can either deploy this to Heroku or run it on your own server, on your own domain or subdomain, and then just reference that as the domain when you're asking for an image. So you'll basically just define this along with a secret when you run this service. And then your other Rails application or any other application can talk to it, and they built a Ruby client to make that easier. So really this just creates the URL for you. So it takes the template and the options and then it goes ahead and embeds the encoded parameters into the URL. So really when you use their client for this, you're just going to be generating URLs. And then when those are accessed, it will talk to the ShareMeow microservice, which will do the image generation and return the image. So I've got a simple little Rails application here with comments, and we're able to add new comments, and then we're going to make this share link actually functional, and that is what we're going to do right now. So let's dive into the code. Now I've cloned the ShareMeow repository to my laptop, and let's open up the code to take a look at this. So this is a regular old Sinatra app, which I know I haven't talked about much, but Sinatra is effectively just a really lightweight version of a web framework. So something like Rails, but just super duper simple. And then you can add in only the functionality you need. And because this service only generates images, there really isn't much to it. For example, you can see that there's a routes file, in app instead of config. And that just delegates to the base routes section. And so this is going to say, let's set all the HTML views inside the app views folder. We're going to enable static files, set logging on, and that's really it. And so then there's another route in here that will use the digest authorization, which is the encoded params in the HMAC digest that we talked about. And this is just going to verify that those are correct, that your application and this service are using the same secret keys. And then it's going to generate that image with the params that you sent. And that's really all the Sinatra app is. It's just going to delegate to the ShareMeow image, which is going to simply look for one of these templates and the associated CSS file, and then render that. So how do you go about running this service? Well, it's really simple. It's a Sinatra app, so you can just call rackup like you would do with Rails if you weren't using the Rails command. So Rails, anytime you see let's list the files. Anytime you see a config.ru, that's a rackup file, and that is Rack's way of saying this is a web application that we're going to have, so just run rackup to start that. Now with this one, we have to set that secret key, and so we have to say ShareMeow secret key equals something, and then we can run rackup. So this will start our Puma server and then start the ShareMeow service on port 9292. Now if we open our browser to localhost port 9292, you're going to see that ShareMeow is running, but that doesn't really do anything. And that's because we have to access those custom URLs. And those URLs to generate images require a bunch of parameters. So it's going to be easiest if we go back here and we grab that Ruby gem to make that work. So you could do all of this stuff in regular old Ruby, requiring those libraries and then generating a URL and then replacing this with localhost 9292. But we're going to do that using the ShareMeow Ruby gem. So let's go ahead and add this to our gem file in our example share application. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll configure the ShareMeow library in order to reference localhost 9292, and then we'll use the same secret key that we set here in the command line, which is going to just simply be the number 1. In production, you're going to want to use a really long string here. In development, you can go with whatever you want, so long as you share the same key on your Rails application and ShareMeow's Sinatra application. So opening up the gem file in our Rails application, I'm just going to paste in the ShareMeow client into the gem file, and we're going to edit the config initializers sharemeow.rb file. And really in here, all you just need to do is paste in their config and change the URL to localhost 9292 and your secret key to match. Now, I would recommend you not hard coding this because you're going to change this in development and production and possibly staging and so on. So it would be probably a good idea to either run different instances of ShareMeow on development than your production one, or you could opt to run all the same one, but that's your call. So if you would like to run different versions of ShareMeow for development and production, you can change this to rails.application.secrets and say ShareMeow URL. And you could do that instead, and then you could open up your secrets.yaml file and set that to ShareMeow your URL here, and then set that and do the same thing for production to whichever URL you would like. And I'd highly recommend you do the same thing for your secret key, and I'm just going to undo all of this for the example though, and we'll just hard code those accordingly. So you'll need to make sure that you leave your ShareMeow server running, and it's going to be in a separate tab in your terminal. So you'll always have this other rackup thing running, and that's just going to be necessary for you to generate those images. That's just how microservices work. You'll have multiple servers running for each of those microservices. So now that we have that, we need to start generating the parameters for the URL here. And to go about learning how we can go do that, we can open up ShareMeow and take a look at what's available. So if you look in the app image templates folder, you're going to see there's 3 files. The base, which gives some default helpers to your templates, and then there's the comment and hello world templates. Now these are example templates, and we're going to use those in our application, but just know that you can go create your own and edit these accordingly. So you can tell it to use different ERB templates, different CSS style sheets, and the list of allowed options can be defined as well. So you'll see that this one, the hello world, is really simple. It's going to generate a 500 pixel wide image, but if you go to comment, you're going to see that it's a different width, renders different templates, has more allowed options, and then it also sets some options ahead of time. So it will automatically parse the name, it will truncate the text for the subject, it will add emojis anywhere that are necessary, and that is going to generate a different image than the hello world one. So these are going to be specified based upon this class name from inside your Rails app. So if we look back at the client, you'll see that they have an example here, and let's copy that into our Rails app just to see how we can render the hello world template. So hopping over to our Rails application, we want to add a share link down here like I showed you before, and that's going to render out this comment in an image. So all we really have to do is go down here and add a regular old link to, and we'll just call it share, and this we can paste in the ShareMeow client code. So this is going to get a URL for us, and then we'll just have a link that takes you to that. So we're going to use the hello world template, and we're going to pass in the options that are required for that, and that's the only thing that's required is the message. And actually, to do a better example here, we can change this to an image tag, and then we'll be able to embed it on the page, and you'll be able to see it. And you'll notice that it takes a second to render, and that's because you are rendering your Rails application. The image is being requested, it goes over to this microservice, the microservice takes the parameters, parses them, generates the image, returns the image, and then finally you'll see it show up on the page. But that will take some time because it's doing quite a bit of work. So the recommended thing here, of course, is to make sure that these images are behind a CDN, so that every time that you generate one of these images, you only generate it one time, and it gets cached, and everybody can view the cached version, so your microservice isn't getting overburdened with work, because it's definitely going to be doing quite a bit of work. So here is the hello world one, and it's working just as we would expect. Now, we want the text to match, so if we change hi in the message to comment.body, you can reference any of the variables you would like in your Rails app, and voila, we have sent over the text from this comment into the hello world template. And one cool thing too is that, so while we might be sending over plain text right now, you could send over the simple formatted version of that. Oops, if I could type. And that will generate simple formatted HTML, and we'll send that over, and it will actually embed the HTML version as well. So this is really nifty, and we can send over custom HTML into the image generator, and it will go ahead and do that for us. So not too much work to set that up. You just pretty much run a server, you share a key between them, configure your Rails app to help generate links, and you're basically done. Now, that's really just generating the hello world template. So if we were to change this template to the comment template that we were looking at just now, you will notice that it has a lot more of allowed options. So if we were to go refresh this page, you're going to see that the image is broken. And the reason for that is because when you go back to the log from the ShareMeow microservice, you're going to see that there's some errors. So anytime that your microservice doesn't get the right parameters, it's going to crash. And the reason for this crash was because we didn't pass in all the correct parameters, and the code was expecting not a nil but a string. So that was the problem there. So we need to make sure that we take all of these and let's take all of that, and I'm actually going to copy that in here. So we'll pass that in as options. If I didn't get the paste right either. So paste those in as options. And then each one of these needs to be set to something. So we'll do comment.body. And the name is going to just be comment.user.email. And user ID is going to be comment.user.id. Subject name is... We'll just set this as comment, and we'll set our min height to say 400 pixels. So if we refresh this page, we'll see that we do get a image posted here. Now, it's not completely correct because the avatar here is coming from Product Hunt's other service, and you can see how that works by going back into ShareMeow's code and then looking at the views, comment.erb. And this is actually where the template is rendered. So these are very similar to Rails templates, but you'll notice we're accessing the options variable, and that is because we're not using Rails, so you're not accessing instance variables like add options or at min height or anything like that. You are just passing in the options hash, and you have to access each of those values there. So when I passed in the user ID, this is actually pulling a user ID from their other service. So you will need to go and edit all the HTML inside these app views yourself in order to customize how that works. So here we have that full freedom to do whatever we would like. So for this, obviously, we don't want to be using the Product Hunt avatars. So we could either like get rid of this URL and replace it with our own. So maybe we have, let's change it and say options, Gravatar URL, and we can go do that. And so let's change our comment class and change user ID to Gravatar URL. And then we can go back to our code here, and we could say user ID, let's change that to Gravatar URL, and we could say Gravatar. So I've already installed a gem called Gravatar image tag. If you're not familiar with that, it's super duper useful. Gravatar is a service to take email addresses and get images, avatars back. And it has these awesome little helpers that will help generate those URLs. So if you take Gravatar image URL as the method and you pass in an email address, you can then send over a Gravatar image, and then we could render this. And if everything went correctly, and it looks like it has some URL there, but it's not correctly being passed over. Now, if we want to debug this and try and figure out how we can customize this and make sure that it's all working correctly, you can actually just simply output your options values right into the image. And because this is generating it every single time you refresh the page and it's not caching it, you'll be able to see the output in the image. So we might need to do an inspect here to see, and it is probably because that value is nil, and so you'll see nil come out. So that means that our value isn't being passed in correctly or something, and so we have to check out what we've got here. So we've got Gravatar URL there, and our ERB template has Gravatar URL there, and it's specified correctly. So then we can go back to our code again and make sure that Gravatar URL is specified correctly there. And then we could also print out on the page Gravatar image URL comment.user.email and make sure that that is being done correctly in the Rails app. So we have this, and then we pass it into the Gravatar thing. And so if we did like .jpeg here, we should get that. But as you might have noticed, the file type seems to have been missing from that URL. So we need to go back and add our file type here. So let's say file type is PNG, and then go back, remove that code, and then refresh. And now we should see the avatar there, but we don't. So that means that something is still missing that we're sending across there. So one thing that you probably need to do is to restart your ShareMeow server anytime you make changes to those templates like that. And that's because there's new values that are being available in the class. And while the templates may get reloaded every single request, the parameters, the options that you pass over are not necessarily. So anytime you make changes to those, you'll have to restart that. But that might also be something that we could fix in the ShareMeow development service to work a little bit more like Rails, where it auto reloads the classes every time. So now you're seeing that we have an avatar. This is my Gravatar. We're using that Gravatar up here, but now it's being loaded inside the Product Hunt's ShareMeow comment CSS like image and everything. So this is super duper cool. We're able to also pull in images and emojis and anything that we want. So we basically are able to generate images with any sort of format we could possibly imagine. We just have to make sure that all of our code is available in the ShareMeow service. So that is really all there is to it. We could go and edit some CSS, but this is pretty much as you would expect. You could change the colors and maybe say, let's just make this links is blue, or let's go back and say like the color for the body should be blue. And so if we were to refresh this, we should see the text has changed to the color blue. Now, if you're interested in building your own image templates, all you have to do is copy, say, comment. That would probably be the best example to copy. And you can just create a new file with your own template there. And so you'll create your own CSS templates and view file, and then you are off to the races. So this will automatically get loaded in image templates when you create a new one, and you'll be able to pass in any of the options you would like over to that. And if you want to override or pre-parse some of those before they go to the views, you can just set them simply by saying add options and the value or the key, and set the value to the parsed version of that. So if you wanted to support Markdown, you could use HTML pipeline or any of the Markdown gems to automatically parse that and then send that out to your template in order to be rendered. And that is that. So really there's not a whole lot to it. You don't have all the niceties of Rails, but you don't need the niceties of Rails because this is really intended to be really lightweight, super fast, and if you throw this up on your own service, you'll be able to use it for any of your applications that want to take advantage of this. And if you look at the rest of the code, it's really straightforward. The ShareMeow image that we were looking at before really just initializes the templates and then uses this image kit class in order to load up the style sheets and then render an image. So it takes some HTML and some options, and then renders it out. And that's it. So if you're interested in looking at that more, you can check out the Image Kit gem, which we might talk about in the future. But yeah, this gem is pretty much super duper lightweight wrapper for Image Kit. It just adds those URLs and Sinatra into it in order to do the validation of the secret key and then do the rendering of your templates. So it's all organized and really easy to use. I think they did a super good job with this. The only thing I'd like to see is I would love to see somebody make a way for you to test these out in the browser. And so maybe you have in development a way of seeing this before it gets rendered through an image, so you could do that a little bit faster or something. Not a huge need because it doesn't take very long to generate an image. So that is ShareMeow and how to build image comments like you would see on Medium. And that's also a whirlwind introduction to microservices. They're all just little applications like this gem that don't do much but one specific thing. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.